Isaiah, thank you for that perfect lead-in to today's roundtable talk. We've got Cassandra Gaines with us, CEO of Carriers, and Thomas Wasson, our enterprise fleet expert. And today, it's all about reputation, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's right. And one of those things that really kind of comes to mind with reputation is one of those things that's so hard to build up and so easy to diminish.
Absolutely. So I've got to ask, Cassandra, thank you for being here with us, first off. But starting off, you've got this carrier who's willing to participate in an 8-year-old's birthday party. Is that a boost to their reputation, or does it take it down a little bit? They're going the extra mile, right?
They totally are going the extra mile. I love that. But, you know, when we were talking about reputation, I'm sure that those carrier sales reps out there and those shippers are like, get back to work. We don't care about the little girl and her birthday party. Move my shipment.
I love it, though. It's that little bit of human interest that helps humanize, literally, the drivers and the carriers and the fleets. But I think that this topic is actually really important, especially in today's day and age, because one little mess up, one delayed shipment, one little piece of attitude that you get from a driver can really either detract to or add to your reputation. That's kind of part of the reason why you have Carrier Sure in the first place, right? Is you have this forum for people to rate their carriers on an A scale to an F scale. So, Cassandra, break us down a little bit about this scale and how it kind of relates to what a carrier does right and does wrong.
Well, I love that you brought that up. And first, I want to point out to any carriers that are listening that this platform will one day allow you to rate brokers and shippers as well. So I want them to know before they hear what I go into, like, whoa, wait a second. No, you'll have a chance for brokers and shippers to get scores and to rate them. So my platform takes in all the FMCSA data. It uses data science and compares carriers to each other so that we can give them a grade from an A to an F. What that allows carriers to do is the ones who are really good, performing very well, they can be separated from all those bottom feeders out there. And y'all know who those bottom feeders are. You see them at truck stations, you see them everywhere. They kind of ruin the reputation of everybody, and it just gives you a chance to illuminate your own company and for brokers and shippers to see how good you are.
And Thomas Watson also joins us. Thomas, talk to us about some of those bottom feeders.
Oh, man. So working at a carrier and being a carrier rep, definitely a situation where a few great ways to become a bottom feeder. 1, don't answer phone calls after you've booked a load, even though you gave information. 2, if you give the driver's information a contact, then the driver either screams at you or doesn't answer the phone. And, you know, there's talking about the bar of threshold, half the battle is just communicating. And then additionally, running into problems. These things are going to happen, but you'll get some carriers that when you book the load with them, everything seems fine. There's no problems. We run into some detention. Next thing you know, they're threatening to pull out of the dock. They're saying that they need an additional $500 or something to stay on the load. And, you know, and it boils down to like predatory practices on the part of the carrier, when in fact, these are just, you know, facts of life for trucking. And so it's kind of like a business relationship. We're talking bottom of the barrel. We're really talking about those that are just trying to opportunistically take advantage of the brokerage because now they know they have the load, and it'll be a lot more work to recover it.
I think that's a really good point, Thomas, because just because things go wrong doesn't necessarily mean that like your carrier sucks, right? Like things happen, you know, and timing gets messed up, things get missed. Phones don't get answered because, you know, you left on top of your truck and you drove away and now you don't have a cell phone anymore, beside the point. But like that happens, right? Especially in the world of freight, is that stuff happens. It's how you respond to it. Do you respond to it with integrity or do you respond to it with excuses? That really makes the difference between maintaining that relationship in a shipper and a carrier. So Thomas, I'm interested in your take on this. How do you, when stuff goes wrong, what should you be doing as a carrier or even as a driver to make sure that you're maintaining that relationship and saying, you know what, this happened, but I'm going to fix it?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it really comes down to professionalism and communication. So as a carrier, how you can do that, first, if you know the facilities, if you're able to call and confirm, that always helps. Brokerages may not have an ops staff, but if it doesn't say in the rate con that you can't call and you're not trying to solicit or anything, just call and verify your PO is good. Verify your pickup number is good. It sucks having to do the work of the broker on the back end, but you'll catch these problems because sometimes now when we're talking about high inventories, maybe that PO wasn't ready to ship. They're going to cancel it out. You just saved a lot of effort. And then secondly, documenting. As soon as you arrive, be honest. What time did you arrive? Did you mark it on your bills? Do you have a situation where your driver is complying with the tracking app? And so these things go a long way for not only the carrier to do their due diligence, but they also help show the broker that this carrier is, they're actually professionals. And it's something that we talk about. There's such a low barrier entry to trucking. The issue is there's a low barrier entry to trucking at times. And so the people you deal with as a broker, you want that carrier that's going to be patient with you and that will do these little things like that, or find a way to get a dock door and be proactive, because sometimes it may take you 2 hours to get a response while the carrier on the ground is able to do a lot more with a lot less.
And Cassandra, we're talking about preserving reputations. Is there any way to rebuild or kind of rebrand, or is it just easier to just say, all right, we screwed up, let's shut operations and let's call ourselves a different name and just hope for the best moving forward?
That's a good question. And to those of you who are wondering, what is he talking about? That's called a chameleon carrier. And often brokers and shippers are always looking for the chameleon carriers who, and it's not as much like, yes, I understand some people just have a streak of bad luck, especially those who aren't experienced in trucking. They have a lot of bad inspections. They had these bad owner operators and they didn't know how to vet the owner operators and manage them. And sometimes, yeah, they do need to shut down their DOT or wait for a while and just run local shipments and get inspections to build the shipments back up and your data back up. But here's the other thing is that we are often, brokers and shippers and the trucking community are trying to avoid those carriers who are their rebirth is with a new DOT number, and they know that what they are doing is wrong and they're going to do it again. Those are called chameleon carriers. So to answer your question, yes, if you've had a string of bad luck and you're inexperienced and you need to just start over, sometimes it is best to maybe start a new MC DOT number and or run under somebody else's DOT, or you do better. You put in better management programs. So making sure you oversee those owner operators running under your DOT number because you're responsible for them. And you make sure you're getting great inspections, get more annual DOTs and roadside inspections to get all of your numbers to increase.
Like, oh, the old Taylor can't come pick up your load right now. Why? Because she's dead, right?
That was good, Kaylee.
That was good. I've been thinking.
I want to add one more thing that Thomas mentioned, which is he talked a lot about what brokers and shippers expect and the pain points, but it's also important for brokers and shippers to set carriers up for success, right? So I've worked for a lot of really big brokers and shippers and carriers, and I've seen the best reps are the ones who set up the carrier and say, this is what we're going to do, this is what we expect, here are the penalties, and can you meet our standards? It was difficult to do that during the last 2 years where capacity was really tight and you're just looking for any carrier. But right now, you get to be more selective. So now set those expectations up. And if you think the carrier can't meet them, pick the other one that you were going to go with.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Cassandra, because that was going to be my next point, is that when we see, of course, the pendulum swing between the power to the carrier to the power to the shipper back and forth, and we're on that more shipper side right now, but I'd argue that we're somewhere kind of between the shipper and the broker that exists in the middle. The power is definitely on that shipper side, though. So they do have the ability to be a little bit more selective. When we see that power dynamic shift, does that change how the expectation and then how the reputation of carriers evolve? And then do carriers have a really good chance to set up their reputations by, not overpay or not overpricing shippers and not, price gouging or et cetera, and that type of space?
100%. Actually, it's a little bit better in this market for those carriers who are experienced and they're good carriers, because now they get to see the bottom feeders be weeded out. The good carriers are the ones who can be more selective with their shippers too and their customers, and they get better rates. But it's definitely, and I'll let Thomas weigh in on this since he's a really good expert in this area too.
Definitely. And I mean, the one thing, because I'm working for a carrier and a broker, whenever the market gets tough, you have to remember you are what you eat. The carriers that you use to run the freight on your behalf also impacts your clout and reputation with the shipper. So if you're working on bottom feeder carriers and that's all you can source, then the shipper is going to think you're a bottom feeding broker. You have to, during these times when the market's getting soft, as a broker, it gets trickier because shippers are going to play you against each other. They're going to adjust the handshake agreements with brokers first before they go to an incumbent carrier that has the lane. And so you have to have a strong operations team. What Cassandra talked about, setting ourselves up for success. Don't put it all just on the sales reps. Have the operations team in the middle if the account's large enough. make sure you have best practices. You're doing your due diligence. I've had a few accounts when I was in operations that carriers would prefer to work with us and give us that discount because they knew they could trust us. And like you said, this trust goes both ways. Carriers will remember brokers that shafted them just as much as brokers always have that one or two carriers that we have on the do not use list for a certain lane. So it's super, super important, especially for the broker being the intermediary, that they have to source right and find the ones that are wrong and don't use them, of course.
It's that entire reputation preservation cycle. It goes all the way across. And then Thomas, last question for you on the enterprise side of things. These fleets that have been around for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, who have an established reputation as a whole entire fleet, how do they change, make those micro changes? Or is it even possible once their reputation has been decades established?
I think it gets a little easier. I came from a very large asset carrier that shippers have a love-hate relationship with large national carriers. And you'd say that for most because it's a statistical thing if your load gets picked up. It's not like a handshake, it's thousands of trucks. So for carriers and the market gets soft, there's an opportunity because they'll take hits on their reputation, but when the market's booming and stuff, they got to use them. When it's tight, now it's time for this carrier to say, let me show you what I can do. I ran this load when the times were tough. I still kept this rate. So making rate-driven decisions, increasing service levels, and doing a better job picking your freight. There's always opportunity for large carriers, but they have to play it smart, and you have to also use that equipment and use that as part of your selling package. Oh, I'm not a small carrier, but I'll give you 50 trailers and I'll make your life easier.
Awesome. Well, Thomas, Cassandra, thank you both so much for joining us for this morning's Roundtable edition. It's been great having you both here. Yeah. Right now, we're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back with more Freight Waves Now to Global.